Imagine adopting a puppy that never stops growing, eating, or making a mess, and you win it at the carnival. You didn't plan on adopting a dog today, but hey, future you can figure out how to care for it. Sounds ridiculous, right? So why is this okay for goldfish? Goldfish deserve better. Alright, maybe that was a bit of a drastic comparison, but let's be real. Goldfish are animals too that need love and care, just like any other pet. And yet somehow, these animals get a pass. Probably because they have this reputation for being easy to care for. But here's the thing, goldfish aren't easy. In fact, they're kind of a nightmare. Just because they're hardy enough to survive in their own filth doesn't mean they deserve it. And if that wasn't bad enough, they never really stop growing either. If they have the room to grow, they'll grow. Throw a common goldfish in a tank where they have the room and they'll grow over a foot long. Remember those articles about giant sewer goldfish that make the news every few years? And the reminders not to flush unwanted pets? Yeah, those are real. The little plastic bowl the Carnival gives you was never big enough for the goldfish at any point. So yeah, a fish that never stops growing, eating, and making a mess of its water, that's not a pet, that's a full-time job. And despite everything that I just said, somehow I ended up with 2 Carnival goldfish of my own. Life's funny like that, isn't it? Look, I didn't exactly choose these guys. I had about as much of a choice as a fire station does when a baby gets dropped off at its door. Perks of being the fish guy, I guess? Let me introduce you to Stinky and Smelly, plus these cool yo-yo loaches. Their tank is at least better than the Carnival plastic ones, but not really by much. There's about 6 fish lengths of swim room in here, basically a fish prison. Time to get to work saving these gross fellas. The first thing I wanted to do was clean the filter. The previous winner of these guys said they clean the filter about once a week, and judging by how gross the water was after rinsing the sponges, yeah, they probably did clean it regularly. I'm not kidding, goldfish are gross. Step 1 is done. Stinky and Smelly aren't in immediate danger of dying in their own filth, but we gotta get them out of their prison tank and into something with some actual swimming room ASAP. So I ran out and bought this. This tank is 4 times as big as their current tank and over 4 feet long. That should give them plenty of swimming space. But there's an issue. I have nowhere to put a tank this big. It's too big for my fish room, and even if there was room, I don't have anything that can support the weight of over 300 pounds of water. This beast of a tank needed a home, or Stinky and Smelly might be stuck in their shoebox forever. Okay, one problem at a time. Where can I put this thing? With only a little chore-related bribery, I successfully convinced my wife that I can make this thing look nice enough to display in the living room. So I started rearranging furniture to make room. Problem solved. Next, what can hold over 300 pounds of water? Nothing I own, at least. My only option? DIY a stand. Spoiler alert, my carpentry skills are exactly what you'd expect from a guy who vacuums fish poop. And yeah, I forgot to hit record for it. So just use your imagination, I guess? Should I have bought a pre-made stand? Maybe. But this was sold on being a presentable, living room displayable tank, so the stand is going to have to look better than this. I got some sheets of 1/4-inch wood to use to add walls to the stand, and, for the second time, didn't record any of it. Look, I don't know, man. I have limited brain cells, and they're usually on vacation. But with the walls on the stand, it was starting to look decent for someone who had no carpentry skills. Heck, I can barely operate a vacuum cleaner. If it used all my skills to get the stand to this point, this next step was going to break me. I was going to make doors. This was the method I came up with. The first step was easy. Wood successfully glued together. The second step, also successful. Until I flipped the doors over. Surprise! The screws for the hinges were longer than I expected. Crap. So I cut a thin strip of wood and added it to the edge so the screws wouldn't be sticking out. Step 2 done. Spoiler alert, I had the same issue with the handles and door catches. But for the sake of my dignity, let's skip those details. You get the idea. Next up, painting. I gotta make this thing look like it belongs in the living room. I picked this light blue because I thought it would have a good contrast with the gold of the goldfish, and was promptly overruled. So I painted it again with this dark green. Between you and me, she was right. With the stand officially done and in place, it was looking solid, except for the back of the doors. We're not going to talk about that. It functions, at least. Finally, I could start actually building the tank for Stinky and Smelly. This thing has to say fancy living room display. Or at least not total chaos. Let's talk hardscape. To make sure it looks good, I got a bunch of this sweet looking dragonstone and a few big chunks of driftwood. And I got to work finding an arrangement I liked. Once I had a design that I liked, I hid the heater behind one of the pieces of driftwood and started to add the substrate. Remember how filthy goldfish are? I added a pretty thick layer of substrate for the plants to root into. More on that later. Then I used a paintbrush to smooth out the substrate and make sure there was enough in all the little nooks and crannies between the rocks and the wood. And with that, the bones of the hardscape were in place. The last thing to do was to top it with some sand, because it just looks better. With the hardscape finished, it was time for the most important part, the plants. Plants are like sponges for all the filth in the water, so since goldfish are extra gross, we need extra plants to clean up after them. They're also wildly overpriced, so whatever you think this cost, double it. To make the planting easier, I filled up the tank a little bit and got busy planting. Once all the plants were in, I filled the tank up the rest of the way and fired up the filter so it would start clearing up the water. Did I mention this filter is super oversized for this tank? I'm just getting prepared for the inevitable mess when Stinky and Smelly move in. Why am I getting so invested in these fish? I really couldn't tell you. By morning, the tank had cleared up and the final build revealed itself. I was super happy with how it turned out, and it was cat approved too. But the tank wasn't ready for Stinky and Smelly. Goldfish more resemble bulldozers when it comes to food, so I wanted to make sure that these plants had a chance to root in before being subjected to goldfish brute force. The extra thick substrate was there to help the plants take root, and I dosed the tank heavily with special fertilizer for a week to speed things up. Shockingly, heavy use of fertilizer led to an algae breakout. But within all that algae was two signs that the fertilizer was working to get this tank goldfish ready. The first sign, new growth on the plants. And the second was a healthy and growing snail population. Cleaning up the algae was easy enough. I used some tweezers to pull out the bigger pieces and siphoned out the smaller stuff. I left most of the sand alone so the snails would have something to clean. There, that looks better. I dialed back the fertilizer usage and let the tank continue to grow for another week. And over the week, encountered Giga Snail. The scale doesn't really work here, but trust me, this guy was like 3 times as big as the rest of the snails. Finally, after 2 weeks of letting the plants prepare for their messy new friends, it was time to get Stinky and Smelly into their new home. I thought it would be fun to try and catch them by hand, and I'll just let you watch how that went for a while. Did I learn anything from catching the first one? Maybe. Was catching them by hand the best way? Absolutely not. But did I have fun? You bet. I was at least smart enough not to try to catch the yo-yo loaches by hand. And I found a couple snails in the old tank, so I made sure to grab them too. As soon as the fish hit the water, I saw a new side to Stinky and Smelly that I had never seen before. They were swimming all over the tank. They looked happy. They looked like completely different fish from the ones that had been stuck in the prison tank. These were not the same goldfish anymore. Stinky, with his long flowing tail, was actually quite a pretty fish. Smelly, on the other hand, he's so orange that he's making my camera confused. Elsewhere, the loaches went straight into hiding and lost a lot of their color, clearly a little nervous over their sudden move. But not even they could resist from venturing out to see what tasty snacks they could find in their new home. And within a couple hours, everybody was out exploring together. So there we go. Goldfish rescued. Plants are Stinky, get out of the way. Plants are Stinky, seriously move. Plants are doing good. Fish are happy. It was too perfect, too peaceful. And with these fish, I knew that meant disaster was lurking. About a week later, there was something clearly wrong with the tank. Let's make it a game. I'll give you 15 seconds to see if you can spot the issue. Comment your answer below. If you get it right, you win, I don't know, a reply from me telling you I'm proud of you. If you lose, you have to subscribe. Is it A, plants are dying, B, the snails are gone, C, the goldfish are dead, or D, what the actual where are the snails? If you answered B or D, you're right. I could not find a single snail left in this tank. So yeah, in a week, somebody managed to wipe the tank clean of snails. Without the snails to keep the tank clean, the algae was coming back with a vengeance. I needed something big, something hungry, something that looks like a stingray. Enter hillstream loaches. They've got to be one of the strangest looking fish out there. These guys, hey come on, let go of the bucket. No, seriously, let go. Dude, get out of the bucket. What, is this a game to you? Finally, there you go, buddy. These guys are like vacuum cleaners. If vacuum cleaners were shaped like aliens and loved algae, or whatever else they can attach their weird bodies to. They should get the glass cleaned up in no time. Once in the tank, some found quiet corners to hide in. Some decided to make a mess exploring their new home. And others found themselves in a completely different type of mess. But once they got settled in, they got right to work alongside the last remaining snails, and the results speak for themselves. Also, check out the pattern they leave on the glass when they eat. Weirdos. The way they eat is somehow even weirder too. But I can't judge them too much because they had this tank looking great in just a couple days. The mini stingray were clearly the right fish for the job. Now with the goldfish happy, and the algae problem solved, and the tank is still cat approved, I think we can call this rescue operation complete. Stinky and Smelly may have started as Carnival rejects in a tiny tank, but a new home in a fishy globe has turned them into happy little bulldozers that I actually like now. Weird how that works. Thanks for joining me on this rescue mission. Stinky and Smelly say hi, and probably want their filter cleaned again. They also said subscribe. Those are their words, not mine.